If you opened your pantry right now and had to feed your household without a normal grocery run, how long would you really last? For a lot of families, the answer is not weeks. It is not even a full week. And that is not because people are careless. It is because the system is built for constant buying, constant restocking, and very little quiet planning. That is why this video is not about panic. It is about protection. Because the best emergency food is usually not some dramatic survival kit sitting in a corner. It is the shelf-stable food already storing value in your kitchen, or the food that should be there before prices jump again, before a storm closes roads, before a paycheck gets tighter, or before a normal routine breaks down. Most households do not notice the gap until they feel it. The fridge is half full. The pantry has snacks, condiments, maybe a few boxes and cans. But if shopping stopped today, a lot of homes would start making hard choices very quickly. And once you are shopping under pressure, you pay more, waste more, and think less clearly. So in this countdown, we are going to look at 20 foods that can actually protect a home. Not because they are fancy, because they last, they work, and they give you options when normal life gets less reliable. And the first thing to understand is this: shelf life is not magic. It is storage science. Food usually breaks down for a few simple reasons. Moisture gets in. Oxygen gets in. Heat speeds everything up. And fats go rancid over time. That is why dry foods in sealed containers, kept cool and away from light, can last so much longer than people expect. This is also why an emergency pantry is not just about stuffing shelves. It is about removing the things that make food fail. Dry, sealed, cool, simple. Now, let's start with the foundation. Number 20 is white rice. White rice is one of the quietest forms of food security you can own. It is cheap, easy to store, and incredibly flexible. Under proper storage, it can last for decades. Not because it is special on its own, but because the moisture and oils that cause faster spoilage have been removed. That matters because rice is not just a side dish. It is a base. You can stretch a meal with it, calm a budget with it, and turn a few other ingredients into something filling. If prices spike or your shopping trip gets cut short, rice does one job extremely well. It gives you dependable calories. Store it dry, sealed, and in a cool place. If you want to go further, use airtight containers and protect it from pests. A bag on a shelf is one thing. A protected container is something else entirely. Number 19 is oats. Oats are one of those foods people buy for breakfast and then forget about, but they belong in any serious pantry. Rolled oats, when kept airtight and cool, can last a very long time. They are simple, filling, and easy to turn into more than just hot cereal. You can bake with them, mix them into meals, or use them to stretch breakfast when fresh food is limited. They also carry more natural oils than white rice, which is why storage matters. Keep the package sealed until you need it. Once opened, move it into a container that keeps out air and moisture. What makes oats useful is not just that they last, it is that they stay useful. That sounds like a small distinction, but it is a big one. A food that sits in the pantry is not the same as a food that saves the pantry. Number 18 is lentils. Lentils are one of the best examples of quiet household protection. Dry lentils can stay usable for a very long time when stored properly, and they bring something many shelf-stable foods do not: protein, fiber, and a meal that feels like real food. That matters in a long disruption. Calories are one thing, nutrients are another. Lentils help with both. They cook faster than many dried beans, they store well, and they can anchor a meal without needing much else. If you want a pantry that does more than just keep you from being hungry, lentils deserve room. Keep them dry and sealed, and remember that age affects cooking time more than safety. Older lentils can still be useful, but they may take longer to soften. Number 17 is wheat berries. This is one of the most overlooked pantry staples in modern homes, which is a shame because wheat berries can be stored for decades under the right conditions. They are the whole grain, so they hold up well when protected from moisture and oxygen. They do take more effort than rice or oats. That is the trade-off, but they also give you a kind of long-term resilience most people never think about. When ground fresh, they can become flour. That means bread, pancakes, flatbreads, and a whole range of basic foods if normal shopping gets interrupted. Historically, grains like wheat were not just food. They were value. They were trade. They were security. And that tells you something important. Societies have always understood that long-lasting grain is not a luxury. It is insurance. Store wheat berries in airtight containers, cool and dry, and keep them away from pests. A bucket with a proper seal is far better than a loose sack in a closet. Number 16 is pure sugar. Sugar is not something people think of as emergency food, but it is one of the most stable pantry items you can own. Pure sugar, when kept dry and sealed, can last essentially indefinitely. It does not spoil the way fresh food does. Now, this does not mean sugar is a meal by itself. Of course not. But in a real disruption, sugar helps with morale, calories, and preservation. It can support baking, balance sour or bitter foods, and help make otherwise plain meals more tolerable. The key is keeping it dry. If moisture gets in, it clumps. If pests get in, it becomes a mess. But if you store it correctly, sugar is one of the most dependable long-term pantry items you can have. And that brings us to something many people forget. A resilient pantry is not only about stopping hunger, it is about making food usable. Number 15 is salt. Salt is one of the simplest and most important items in the entire house. Pure salt lasts essentially forever when kept dry and sealed. It does not expire in the normal way, and that alone makes it worth protecting. But salt does much more than season food. It helps preserve food. It supports basic body function. And it turns bland survival meals into something you can actually keep eating. That second part matters more than people realize. A pantry full of food you dread will not protect you well. You will avoid it, waste it, or make bad choices when stress is high. Salt helps make basic food sustainable. Store it in a dry container, keep the lid tight, and never underestimate how valuable a plain, ordinary pantry item can be when the rest of the system is under strain. Number 14 is honey. Honey is one of those foods that sounds almost too good to be true, but the record is real. Honey has been found in ancient tombs and archaeological sites still preserved after an astonishing amount of time. Under the right conditions, it resists spoilage incredibly well. Why? Because honey is low in moisture and naturally unfriendly to microbes. That is why it can last so long. It is not because it is sealed in some magical way. It is because its chemistry works in its favor. For a household, honey is useful in a very practical way. It sweetens food, it pairs with bread and oats, and it gives you something that feels comforting when everything else is repetitive. That comfort is not cosmetic. It helps people keep eating. If honey crystallizes, that is usually not a sign it is bad. It often just means it has cooled and changed texture. Gentle warming can bring it back. Keep it sealed, keep it dry, and it can remain one of the most reliable items in the cupboard. Number 13 is white vinegar. White vinegar is one of the most overlooked protection items in a kitchen because it does so many jobs at once. It lasts a very long time under normal storage, and it is already familiar to most homes. You can use it for cooking, cleaning, and simple food preservation tasks. It adds brightness to flavor, helps with pickling, and gives you a way to make food more flexible when fresh ingredients are limited. This is a recurring pattern in resilient food storage. The best items are rarely dramatic. They are multi-purpose. Vinegar is a small bottle that solves several problems. Keep it in a normal cupboard or pantry. No special treatment needed. That is part of the value. It is simple, low cost, and ready when you need it. Number 12 is non-fat dry milk. This one deserves more attention than it gets. Non-fat dry milk can last for many years under proper storage, and in some cases much longer than people expect. It gives you calcium, protein, and the ability to restore something close to a normal kitchen routine. That matters because milk is not just a beverage. It is part of breakfast, baking, cooking, and comfort. When fresh milk becomes inconvenient or expensive, powdered milk fills an important gap. Store it airtight and cool, and once opened, protect it carefully. Dry milk is not about replacing every dairy need forever. It is about giving your household options when refrigeration, delivery, or budget becomes less reliable. And now we start moving into foods that do not just last. They help you live with the situation. Number 11 is canned meats. Canned tuna, chicken, and similar shelf-stable meats can often last for years, sometimes 5 to 10 or more, depending on storage conditions. The exact timeline depends on the product and the temperature it has lived in. But the larger point is simple. Cans turn protein into long-term protection. That matters because when you are under pressure, you do not want every meal to be a recipe project. You want ready-to-eat protein that can sit on the shelf and wait. Cans should be stored in a cool, dry place, away from dents, swelling, and rust. And while canned meat is incredibly practical, it should still be rotated before it ages out. Long-lasting does not mean forgotten. Now, before we move into the next group, here is the midpoint reset. If you had to build a pantry that actually worked under stress, it only has 3 jobs. First, it must provide calories. Second, it must provide nutrients. Third, it must preserve morale. A lot of people only think about the first one. They store food that fills a stomach, but not food that keeps a body functioning or a household calm. And that is where many emergency pantries fail. Calories keep you going. Nutrients keep you upright. Morale keeps judgment intact. That means a good pantry is not just survival, it is stability. Ask yourself this: if you had to eat from your pantry for a week, would your meals still feel like meals? Would they give you energy? Would they be workable for children, older adults, or anyone who cannot handle a lot of prep? That question changes how you shop. It changes what you store. And it shifts you away from fear toward control. Number 10 is peanut butter. Peanut butter is one of the most valuable pantry foods in ordinary life and in a disruption. It is calorie-dense, it provides protein and fats, and it requires almost no preparation. Depending on the brand and storage conditions, it can last a surprisingly long time on the shelf. Why does that matter? Because when life gets complicated, the foods that require no effort become far more important than they seem on a normal day. Peanut butter can be eaten with bread, crackers, oats, or fruit. It is familiar, useful, and filling. And for many households, it is one of the easiest ways to keep a meal from feeling empty. Store it away from heat and rotate it before the oils separate too much or the flavor declines. If you want a pantry item that most people already know how to use, this is one of the strongest choices. Number 9 is ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, and that change makes a big difference. Compared with regular butter, and in many cases compared with some oils, ghee has much better shelf stability when stored properly. It can last a long time because the milk solids that spoil faster have been removed. That means you get fat, flavor, and cooking value without depending on refrigeration in the same way fresh butter does. Fats matter in a resilient pantry because they carry calories and help the body absorb certain vitamins. A pantry made only of dry starches can keep you full, but not necessarily well. Ghee gives you a richer, more usable meal base. Store it sealed, in a cool place, and keep it away from heat. Small changes in storage can make a large difference in shelf life. Number 8 is white rice again, but this time for a different reason. This is where you see why one food can be valuable in more than one way. White rice is not just a backup calorie source. It is also one of the best foods for turning almost nothing into something workable. A bowl of rice with a little salt, a little canned protein, or a spoon of honey is not glamorous. But it is a meal. And when people are stressed, simplicity is a strength. That is the hidden value of staple foods. They do not need a recipe to justify themselves. They support the rest of the pantry. If you only remember one thing from this video, remember this. The most powerful emergency food is often the one that makes every other food more useful. Number 7 is instant coffee. This is not about luxury. It is about routine. Instant coffee can last a very long time, especially if it is freeze-dried and stored properly. And in a difficult period, that matters more than some people expect. A warm cup in the morning can keep the day feeling normal. It gives structure. It gives a small sense of control. That may sound minor until you realize how much bad decision-making comes from fatigue and stress. A familiar ritual can help steady a household. Store it sealed, away from heat and moisture. You do not need much of it to be useful. You just need it to be there when normal life feels unstable. Number 6 is bouillon cubes. Bouillon is one of the smartest small pantry items because it turns plain water and a few ingredients into something that tastes like food. Many bouillon products last for years when kept cool and dry, though exact shelf life depends on the brand and storage conditions. This is what makes them so valuable. They rescue boring meals. A bowl of rice with bouillon is better than plain rice. Lentils with bouillon become more satisfying. Even if fresh vegetables are limited, a simple broth flavor can make the whole pantry feel more complete. That is not a small thing. In long disruptions, taste is not a bonus. It is one of the tools that helps you keep using your food instead of resenting it. Number 5 is canned vegetables. Canned vegetables are not exciting, but they are important. They can often last 5 to 10 years or more depending on storage and canned quality, and they bring something many shelf-stable foods lack: micronutrients and variety. This is where a pantry starts becoming more than a stack of calories. Vegetables help cover gaps. They add fiber, texture, and some balance to meals built from rice, grains, and protein. Store cans in a cool, dry place, and always check for bulges, leaks, or rust. A damaged can is not a bargain, it is a loss. If you want a pantry that supports older adults, children, or anyone with limited appetite, vegetables matter because they make the food system feel more complete. Number 4 is freeze-dried fruit. This is one of the most underrated morale foods you can store. Freeze-dried fruit can last for a very long time when sealed properly, and it brings something shelf-stable meals often lose: color, sweetness, and variety. In a stress period, that matters more than people admit. When every meal starts to look the same, appetite drops. People get tired of eating, and that leads to waste, undereating, and poor choices. A little fruit in the pantry helps break that cycle. It can be eaten as is, mixed into oats, or used to make a meal feel less repetitive. Keep it sealed tightly and away from moisture, because once air and humidity get in, the quality falls fast. Number 3 is MREs. Meals ready to eat are not for everyday life, but they are incredibly practical in the right situation. They are designed to be self-contained, portable, and low effort. Depending on storage temperature, many MREs can last years, sometimes 5 to 10 or more. What makes them useful is not just durability, it is convenience. If power is out, water is limited, or time is tight, a no-cook meal has real value. That is why MREs often show up in emergency kits, car kits, and backup supplies. They are not meant to replace your pantry. They are meant to bridge the gap when normal cooking becomes hard, and that bridge can matter a lot. Number 2 is oats again, but now for the bigger lesson. Oats are one of the most useful everyday foods you can own because they sit right in the sweet spot between longevity, nutrition, and familiarity. You do not need a special lifestyle to use them. You do not need training. You already know how they work. That is the point. The best emergency food is usually the food you already eat. You do not need a bunker to be protected. You need a pantry that makes sense. Store oats cool, dry, and sealed. Rotate them, use them, refill them. That rhythm is what turns a stash into security. And now we are at number 1, peanut butter. If you had to choose one food that combines convenience, calories, protein, familiarity, and long shelf usefulness, peanut butter is hard to beat. It is ready without cooking. It works with many other foods. It is easy to store. And it is one of the few shelf-stable items that many households will actually use before it goes to waste. That last part matters more than people think. A perfect emergency food that nobody eats is not protection. It is clutter. The strongest pantry items are the ones that fit normal life while quietly preparing you for something abnormal. Peanut butter does that well. So do rice, oats, lentils, salt, sugar, honey, canned proteins, and the other staples we covered. None of them are glamorous. That is exactly why they work. Now step back and look at the whole pattern. A resilient pantry is built from a few simple truths. First, dry foods last when you protect them from moisture, heat, and oxygen. Second, fats and proteins matter because calories alone are not enough. Third, flavor and variety are not optional because people need to keep eating under stress. And fourth, the best emergency food is usually just ordinary food stored correctly before you need it. That is the real consumer protection lesson here. The goal is not fear. The goal is options. You do not need to transform your kitchen overnight. Start with a few stable items you already use. Store them better, rotate them before they age out, keep them in sealed containers if needed. Build slowly, calmly, and deliberately. That is how you protect money. That is how you reduce waste. That is how you avoid being cornered by a bad week, a broken supply chain, or a price jump you did not see coming. Preparedness is not panic. It is refusing to be surprised. If you want, the next time you shop, look at your cart through this one question. Does this food only feed today, or does it also protect tomorrow? That simple shift changes everything. And if this kind of calm, practical breakdown helps, stay with the Consumer Crisis Report. We keep tracking the pressures behind grocery prices, household waste, and the everyday choices that quietly decide how secure a home really is.